Good morning, students. In today's class, we are going to talk about common errors in the use of adverbs. Let us first talk about the two adverbs very and much. Very qualifies adjective or adverbs in the positive degree and much qualifies them in the comparative degree. I repeat, very qualifies adjectives or adverbs in the positive degree and much qualifies them in the comparative degree. As for example, we have two sentences. She is a very intelligent girl. And the second sentence, she runs much faster than Savita. So if you notice in the use of adverbs very and much, in the first sentence, that is, she is a very intelligent girl, there is the positive degree. And in the second sentence, she runs much faster than Savita, there is a comparative degree because we have a comparison between the subject she and Savita. Now the second rule is, very is used with present participles when they are used as adjectives, and much is used to modify past participles when they have their full verbal function. As for example, we can have, the scenery is very charming. And the second sentence, the foreign policy of the government was much criticized in parliament. So the second rule says that very is used with present participle when they are used in adjectives, and much is used to modify past participles when they have their full verbal function. The third function we can say is, very is used with an adjective in the superlative degree for emphasis. Very is used with an adjective in the superlative degree for emphasis. As for example, we have a sentence, he is the very best student in the class. In the same way, much is used with an adjective in the superlative degree to intensify the meaning. It is not used here for emphasis but to intensify the meaning. As for example, you have a sentence, you are much the brightest student in the class. What is meant by the sentence is that when we say that you are much the brightest, it implies that you are by far the brightest student in the class. Sometimes we can also use that very is used to modify much. As for example, I am very much interested in staging plays. Now, we have talked about very and much. Let us talk about the next adverb to. To denotes a higher degree that is desirable, natural, proper or expected. It should never be used instead of very or much. It is incorrect to say the water is too cold. Instead, one should say the water is very cold. So when we talk about adverb to, we say that to denotes a higher degree than is desirable, natural or proper. We don't have to use it with very or much. The second rule regarding to is that to generally has a negative sense and is then followed by an infinitive. As for example, she's too lazy to work hard. To is preceded by only when it has a positive sense. He is only too glad to meet his friends. Similarly, too much is generally used before a noun. He takes too much sugar in his tea. And sometimes to may also means also. Have you been to the party too? ? So when we talk about the second adverb to, we come to know that to has a negative sense when it is followed by an infinitive. It is preceded by only when it has a positive sense. Too much is generally used before a noun, and to also means also. The next adverb that we take is enough. Enough means sufficient and is always used in the positive sense. It is placed after the adjective or adverb but before the noun. As for example, he was tall enough to reach the shelf. He was tall enough to reach the shelf. The next set of adverbs that we have is hardly, barely and scarcely. These three are very similar in meaning and usage. They are almost negative in meaning. Hardly is chiefly used with any, ever or the verb can. Hardly any, hardly ever. Hardly used with can also means with great difficulty. So these are the three uses of hardly. And when we use barely, barely means no more than and is often used with adjectives such as enough and sufficient. I repeat, barely means no more than and is often used with adjectives such as enough and sufficient. As for example, she is barely 11 but quite intelligent. Only just 11 but she is very intelligent. Now we have another set of adverbs before, ago and since. This is an important category because most of the confusion with the students regarding these adverbs is very much evident when it comes to the exercises. So let us discuss as to what is the use of before. Before as an adverb means formally or on a former occasion. I have been to the zoo before. That means earlier also I had been to the zoo. Ago denotes a period of time from the present dating backwards. So when we come to the use of ago, ago denotes a period of time from the present dating backwards. I met your brother 3 days ago means 3 days previously I have met your brother. And since as an adverb denotes the period from the time of reference to some past events, thus it can be used in place of ago. He died 3 years since. He died 3 years since. The next few adverbs that we have is yet and still. Yet means up to the moment of speaking. It is mainly used in negative or negative interrogative sentences. It is very rarely used with the affirmative. In any case, it presents the present situation in relation to the future. She hasn't learned to drive a car yet. Haven't you finished that game yet? Question mark. Still denotes that some activity or situation continues from the past into the present. It is still raining, which implies that it was raining previously and it has not stopped raining. So when we are to distinguish between the two adverbs yet and still, we can say that yet means up to the moment of speaking, and still refers to that activity or situation which has continued from the past into the present. And the last set of adverbs that we discuss and which are very important is fairly and rather. We can say that both fairly and rather means moderately. Fairly is used with favorable adjectives and adverbs, clever, wise, intelligent, and rather is used with the unfavorable ones, foolish, ugly. As for example, the child is fairly clever for his age. She is rather ugly. I can repeat the function for you. Both fairly and rather means moderately, and fairly is used with favorable adjectives and adverbs, clever, wise, intelligent, and rather is used with unfavorable ones, foolish and ugly. Rather would denote preferences. I would rather take the green one. With comparatives, rather means slightly or a little. There is a rather smaller than the size I needed. And rather is used as an adverb of degree before verb that express a feeling or an attitude of mind. I rather feared this. So students, there are few adverbs which are very important, and I have taken them in the class. The first set of adverbs that we did were very and much. Then we talked about to, enough, barely, hardly, scarcely, before, ago, since, yet, still, and then we had fairly and rather. I will give you 5 incorrect sentences. You can take them as exercises and you can correct them and send me on my WhatsApp. The first sentence, it is bitter cold today. This is an incorrect sentence. You have to correct it with proper adverb. I am feeling so lonely. The second sentence, I am feeling so lonely. Third sentence, last night you returned lately. Last night you returned lately. Fourth sentence, she was even blamed by her parents. She was even blamed by her parents. And the last sentence is, he is a much learned man. He is a much learned man. So students, these are the errors that occur when we use the adverbs. In my previous classes, we have discussed the subject-verb agreement. We have discussed errors pertaining to nouns and adjectives and prepositions also. And in the next class, we are going to wind up this particular segment in which we are going to take a recap of what we have done and the few important things that have been left to be covered under this topic. Thank you, students.